In a dying Midwestern town in 1968, a widow armed with only $50 was about to unearth a conspiracy that had been buried for 3 decades. What started as buying an abandoned building to escape grief took a shocking turn when she discovered a sealed metal vault behind a wall that shouldn't have existed. Nora Callahan wasn't your typical bargain hunter. For years, she had spent her life as a schoolteacher alongside her late husband Patrick, known for her quiet determination and inability to let injustice stand. She came to Ashgrove seeking silence, a place where memories didn't echo quite so loud. When she found that hollow wall behind the store's counter, she had no idea she was about to expose the founding families who built their fortunes on theft. Nora pried open that vault with a crowbar and discovered Clara Hensley's confession, letters, ledgers, and proof that the town's entire prosperity was stolen from a woman they'd erased from history. What she didn't know was that Clara was her own great-great-grandmother, and her late husband's family had helped destroy her. What began as a widow's attempt to build a quiet library would become a reckoning that shattered every comfortable lie Ashgrove told itself. The town would never be the same after Nora Callahan chose truth over silence, even when it meant burning down the legacy of the man she loved. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The auctioneer's gavel came down like a judgment. $50. Sold to the widow in the back. I didn't raise my hand high. Didn't need to. No one else wanted the Hensley place. 3 decades abandoned, windows boarded, roof sagging like a broken promise. The building hunched on Main Street between the shuttered pharmacy and Dot's Diner, a gap-toothed smile in Ashgrove's dying grin. $50 for dust and wood and ghosts. The man beside me shifted in his folding chair. I felt his stare like fingers on my neck. Whispers rippled through the courthouse basement. The Callahan woman buying property. And Patrick's widow come back after all these years. What's she thinking? What's she want? I wanted silence. The kind you can't find in a city apartment where sirens wail and neighbors argue through thin walls. I wanted a place where Patrick's absence didn't echo quite so loud. The store was perfect, empty, forgotten, mine. September heat pressed against my skin as I walked Main Street toward my purchase. Ashgrove looked smaller than I remembered. Meaner somehow. Paint peeled from storefronts. Half the shop stood vacant. The bank, the barber, the 5 and dime where I'd bought penny candy as a girl. All hollow now. Windows dark. Only the diner showed life. 3 pickup trucks parked outside. Old men inside drinking coffee and watching me pass. I didn't wave. The Hensley building loomed ahead. 2 stories of red brick gone rust-colored with age. The sign above the door hung crooked. Letters faded to ghosts. Hensley's General Goods, Esther 1891. I'd walked past this place 1,000 times as a child, never once went inside. By the time I was old enough to notice, it was already closed, already haunted by whatever sent folks crossing to the other side of the street. The padlock on the front door was new. County property, secured until sold. I fitted the key the clerk gave me. The lock opened with a click that sounded too loud in the afternoon quiet. The door didn't want to open. Swollen wood, decades of settling. I put my shoulder into it. Something inside cracked, and the door swung inward on screaming hinges. Dust exploded into sunlight. I coughed, eyes watering. The smell hit me next. Old paper, mildew, something sweet and rotten underneath, like fruit left too long in a cellar. I pulled my collar over my nose and stepped inside. Darkness swallowed me whole. My eyes adjusted slowly. Shapes emerged from shadow. A long wooden counter running the left side. Shelves lining every wall, floor to ceiling, empty and sagging. The floor was wide pine planks, buckled in places, scattered with fallen plaster from the ceiling. A staircase at the back led up to what must have been storage or living quarters. I stood in the center of the room, letting the silence settle around me. This was mine now. This building, with its broken windows and haunted reputation. This place no one wanted. Perfect, I heard footsteps on the sidewalk outside. Quick, purposeful. A woman's voice called my name. Nora Callahan, I saw you walk in here and thought I was seeing things. I turned. Evelyn Moore stood in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun. Evie. My God, Evie. We'd been inseparable as girls. Traded secrets, braided each other's hair, planned futures that never quite arrived. Then I married Patrick and moved east, and we'd exchanged Christmas cards that grew more sparse each year until they stopped, Evie. She stepped inside and pulled me into a hug that smelled like old books and peppermint. When she pulled back, her eyes were wet. I heard Patrick past. I'm so sorry. I wanted to write, but didn't know what to say. No one knows what to say. She studied my face with that sharp librarian's gaze. Evie had always been the smart one. The one who read everything, remembered everything, saw connections others missed. She still wore her hair the same way. Short, practical, going grey at the temples. You bought this place? I did. Why? Good question. I looked around at the wreckage. I thought I'd make it a library. Community space. Somewhere people could come read, learn, remember. Evie's expression shifted. Something flickered behind her eyes. Not quite approval. More like recognition. This town could use that. She walked slowly through the room, footsteps echoing. Do you know the history of this place? General store. Closed in the 30s. Closed is a polite word for it. She ran her finger along the counter, drawing a line in the dust. The owner was a woman named Clara Hensley. Ran the store alone after her husband died. One day in 1934, she just disappeared. Store stayed locked. Family never claimed it. Eventually, the county took it for back taxes. Something in her voice made my skin prickle. Disappeared how? No one knows. Or no one says. Evie turned to face me. People don't like talking about Clara Hensley. I've worked at the library for 30 years. Anytime I try to find records about her, there's nothing. No obituary, no property transfer. Just gone. I looked around the empty store with new eyes. That's strange. Everything about this place is strange. Evie moved toward the back wall where the shelves stood tallest. She pressed her palm against the wood. But if anyone can uncover what happened, it's you. You always did have a nose for things people wanted to keep hidden. I laughed, but it came out hollow. That was a long time ago, was it? She smiled, sad and knowing. Come by the library tomorrow. I'll show you what I've got on Clara Hensley. It's not much, but it's something. After Evie left, I spent the rest of the afternoon exploring. The upstairs was worse than downstairs. Pigeon droppings, fallen beams, plaster crumbled to powder. But the bones were good. Solid brick walls, high ceilings, tall windows that would flood the space with light once the boards came off. I could see it, reading nooks in the corners. Shelves full of books. Children sitting on the floor during story hour. A place alive again. I worked until dusk, sweeping the worst of the debris into piles. My back ached. Dust coated my clothes, my skin, filled my lungs. But it felt good. Physical work. Something real and immediate. Better than sitting alone in my apartment, staring at Patrick's photographs. I was pushing the broom behind the counter when it happened. The bristles caught on something. A loose floorboard, maybe. I knelt down, running my hand along the seam where floor met wall. The board there was newer than the others. Different wood, different finish. Like someone had replaced it. I tapped the board with my knuckles. The sound came back hollow. My heartbeat quickened. I tapped again. Solid floor on both sides, but here, right here behind the counter, nothing but empty space underneath. I wedged the broom handle into the seam and pried. The board lifted easily, too easily, revealing a dark gap. I pulled out my pocket flashlight and shone it into the space. Metal gleamed back at me. A door, or part of one. Smooth metal surface where there should have been foundation or dirt. I pressed my hand against it, cold, solid, definitely not natural. Someone had built something beneath this floor, and someone had hidden it. I sat back on my heels, pulse hammering in my ears. The rational part of my brain said this was nothing. Old root cellar, maybe. Storage space. Every building this age had oddities, but Evie's words echoed back. Everything about this place is strange. I looked at the shelving unit against the back wall. It stood floor to ceiling, built into the structure. Too heavy to move easily. But now I noticed something. The wall behind it looked different. cleaner, newer. I stood and walked to the shelves, running my hand along the wood. Behind the bottom shelf, barely visible in the dim light, I saw it. A seam. A clean vertical line where walls should have been continuous. I grabbed the shelf and pulled. It didn't budge, built in. Probably nailed or bolted, but that seam called to me like a voice. I checked my watch. Nearly 8. Too dark to see properly. I'd need tools tomorrow. A pry bar. Better light. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but stopped at the threshold. Looked back at the dark interior, the counter, the shelves, that hidden seam. $50, the auctioneer had said. What had I really bought? That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my rental room above the diner, listening to voices filter up through the floorboards. The bed was too soft. The pillow smelled like someone else's soap. Through the thin curtains, streetlight painted yellow bars across the ceiling. Patrick used to joke that I slept like the dead. Nothing woke me. Thunder sirens, his snoring. I'd sleep through it all, but tonight every sound pulled me awake. Footsteps on the stairs. A truck rumbling past. Wind rattling the loose window pane, and underneath it all a question circling my mind like water down a drain. What's behind that wall? I dreamed of knocking, steady rhythmic metal on metal. Knock, knock, knock. From deep underground, from sealed spaces, from places where the dead keep their secrets. I woke at dawn, with my heart racing and Clara Hensley's name on my lips. I bought a crowbar at the hardware store. The clerk looked at me like I'd asked for a gun. Planning some demolition. Restoration. I paid cash and left before he could ask more questions. Ashgrove's main street looked different in morning light. Sad rather than menacing. Old men sat on benches outside the post office. A woman swept the sidewalk in front of the beauty parlor. Normal small-town rhythms, but I felt eyes following me as I walked back to the store, tracking, assessing, the widow with the crowbar. What's she after? I let myself in and locked the door behind me. The darkness felt expectant somehow, like the building had been waiting all night for me to return. I went straight to the back wall. The shelving unit loomed in shadow. I set down my bag and pulled out my flashlight, training the beam along that vertical seam. Up close, it was obvious. 2 wall sections meeting, one slightly newer. The newer section ran floor to ceiling, maybe 4 feet wide. Just wide enough for a door. I positioned the crowbar at the bottom of the shelf and pulled. Wood groaned. Nail screamed. The shelf held fast, but I felt it give just a fraction. I repositioned, braced my foot and pulled harder. Something cracked. The whole unit shifted forward an inch. Dust rained down. Behind the shelf, behind that false wall, I heard something else. A whisper of air. A space opening. Cold sweat ran down my back, despite the morning heat. I worked for 20 minutes, prying the shelf away from the wall, inch by inch. My arms burned. My hands blistered. But finally, the bottom pulled free. I wedged the crowbar into the wall seam. The wood split with a sound like breaking bone. Behind it, darkness. And metal, I ripped away more boards, heart hammering, until I could see it clearly. A door. Sealed metal door, maybe 3 feet high and 2 feet wide. Built into the wall itself. The metal was old, pitted with rust, but solid. No handle, no hinges visible. Just smooth surface and a seam running the perimeter, welded shut. I pressed my palm against it. The metal was cold even in the summer heat. I knocked. The sound rang hollow, echoing in whatever space lay beyond. Someone had built a vault inside this building. Someone had sealed it, and no one had mentioned it. Not the county clerk, not the auction listing, not Evie's stories about Clara Hensley disappearing. I sat down hard on the floor, staring at the metal door. My hands shook. This wasn't restoration. This was discovery. And something deep in my gut said I'd found something I wasn't meant to find. The question was simple. What was behind that door? And the second question, colder, sharper, why was it hidden? I spent 2 hours searching the building for any mention of a vault. Nothing. The upstairs was empty. The cellar held only broken crates and standing water. No documents, no records. No hint that this sealed door existed. At noon, I locked up and walked to the courthouse. The county clerk's office smelled like old paper and floor wax. A woman with horn-rimmed glasses looked up from her typewriter. "Help you? I need to see the property records for 412 Main Street. The Hensley building." Her expression went carefully neutral. "You the one who bought it?" "I am." She disappeared into a back room and returned with a file folder, thin and worn. She set it on the counter without comment. I flipped through the pages. Tax records going back decades. The 1934 closure, county seizure in 1942. A handful of failed sale attempts. But no building plans, no architectural surveys, nothing that would show a hidden vault. Are there construction records? Original plans? If there were, they'd be here. What about the original owner, Clara Hensley? Are there any personal records? The woman's face closed like a door. Nothing in this file, but elsewhere. "Ma'am, I've given you what we have." I heard the dismissal in her voice. I closed the folder and slid it back across the counter. Who would know more about the building's history? That'd be before my time. Is there anyone in town who worked with Clara Hensley? Anyone who knew her? The woman's mouth thinned. That was 40 years ago. Most folks from that era are gone. Most, not all. She turned back to her typewriter. If you're looking for gossip about old Hensleys, try the diner. Old men there love talking about the past. I left the courthouse with more questions than answers. The library was my next stop. Evie saw me coming through the glass door and waved me toward her desk in the back. The library was small, 3 rooms crowded with books and the musty smell of preservation. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Evie gestured to a chair. I sat. "I found something. At the store." Her pen stopped moving. "Found what?" "A sealed metal door, built into the back wall, hidden behind the shelves." The color drained from Evie's face. She set down her pen very carefully. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "A vault?" "Looks like it. Welded shut. No mention of it anywhere in the property records." Evie stood abruptly and went to a filing cabinet in the corner. She pulled out a folder, thin and worn, and brought it back to the desk. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. "I've been collecting pieces for years. Anything related to Clara Hensley? It's not much. The official records are practically non-existent." She spread the contents across her desk. Newspaper clippings, yellowed with age. A photograph, formal and stiff, showing a woman in her 30s standing in front of the store. "Clara Hensley," the caption read, "proprietor." Clara's face was sharp and intelligent. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that looked directly at the camera with something like defiance. She opened the store in 1928, Evie said. Husband had died the year before. She ran it alone for 6 years. By all accounts, she was successful. Fair prices. Honest dealings. People liked her. What happened? That's the question. Evie pulled out a newspaper clipping dated April 1934. This is the last mention of her. Local merchant missing. 2 sentences, then nothing. I read the brief article. Clara Hensley had failed to open her store for 3 days. Sheriff investigated, found the building locked, no sign of struggle. Clara had simply vanished. No body was ever found, Evie continued. No evidence of foul play. The store stayed locked. Her family never came forward. After a few years, people stopped asking questions. That's not normal. Nothing about this is normal. Evie met my eyes. I think someone wanted Clara Hensley erased. I think whatever's in that vault is the reason why. A chill ran down my spine. You think she was murdered? I think she knew something. Had something, and someone made sure it stayed hidden. I looked at the photograph again. Clara's defiant gaze. A woman who'd run a business alone during the Depression. A woman who disappeared without a trace. And I just found her vault. I need to open it, I said. Nora, whatever's in there, it's been hidden for 40 years. Don't you want to know why? Evie studied me for a long moment. You sound like Patrick. He always wanted to dig up what others buried, Patrick. My chest tightened. He would have done the same thing. I know, Evie sighed. Which is probably why you're doing it. She pulled out another clipping, this one from 1933, a photograph of Ashgrove's Founders' Day celebration. Men in suits standing on a platform. I recognized the building behind them. The courthouse. These are the town founders' descendants, Evie said, pointing to the men in the photo. This one here, front and center. That's Samuel Avery, Mayor Thomas Avery's grandfather. I leaned closer. Samuel Avery stood tall and confident, hand raised in a wave. Behind him, other men. Other names. One caught my eye. George Callahan, my late husband's grandfather. My blood went cold. Patrick's family was here. Some of the founding families. Evie's voice was careful. The Callahans. The Averys. A few others. They built this town. Owned most of the businesses. Still do in a way. I stared at George Callahan's face. I'd seen photos of him before. Patrick had shown me the family albums. The stern-faced patriarch who'd built the family fortune, who died wealthy and respected. I'd never asked where the money came from. Did he know Clara Hensley? Everyone knew everyone back then. Evie pulled the clipping back. But I don't have any records of direct connection. Yet, she agreed. I left the library with my mind spinning. The vault. Clara's disappearance? Patrick's grandfather in the founding family's photograph. Coincidence or connection? I walked back toward the store but stopped when I saw the patrol car parked outside. Sheriff Hank Drayton leaned against the door, arms crossed, watching me approach. He was older than me by maybe 10 years. Hard face, harder eyes. His father had been sheriff before him. His grandfather before that. The Draytons kept the peace in Ashgrove, the same way the Averys kept power. By inheritance, Mrs. Callahan. Sheriff. Heard you've been asking questions at the courthouse. About the building's history. Word traveled fast in small towns. I'm the owner. I'm entitled to know about my property, of course. His smile didn't reach his eyes. But I'm hearing other things too. About you tearing out walls. Making modifications without permits. And restoring without permits, he repeated. That's a violation of town ordinance. I felt anger flare hot in my chest. I bought this building legally. What I do with it is my business. Everything in Ashgrove is town business. He pushed off the door and walked toward me, especially when it involves disturbing things that are better left alone. Better left alone by who? His jaw tightened. I'm not here to threaten you, Mrs. Callahan. I'm here to give you friendly advice. This town has history. Old history. Digging it up won't do anyone any good. And if I disagree, then you'll find Ashgrove isn't as welcoming as you remember. He tipped his hat and walked back to his patrol car. I stood on the sidewalk watching him drive away. My hands clenched into fists. Someone didn't want me opening that vault, which meant whatever was inside was worth protecting. I spent the rest of the afternoon researching how to cut through welded metal. The hardware store clerk looked at me like I'd lost my mind when I asked about angle grinders. But I bought one anyway, along with safety goggles, work gloves, and every blade attachment he had. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Clara Hensley's face in that photograph. Her defiant eyes. A woman who'd built something alone and then vanished. I thought about Patrick, too. The way he used to talk about truth and justice like they were things that mattered. The way he died, believing the world could be made better. He would have opened the vault. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. And so would I. Dawn came cold and grey. I arrived at the store before the town woke, while Main Street lay empty and the diner's lights were still dark. The angle grinder was heavier than I expected. I carried it inside along with an extension cord I'd bought and set everything up by the vault door. My hands shook as I put on the safety goggles. This was it. Point of no return. Once I cut through that seal, whatever was hidden would be exposed. I pulled the trigger. Sparks exploded like fireworks. The blade bit into metal with a shriek that made my teeth ache. The smell of burning metal filled the air, acrid and sharp. I worked slowly, carefully, cutting along the welded seam. It took 40 minutes to cut through the seal. 40 minutes of screaming metal and flying sparks and my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. Finally, the last section separated. The door panel fell inward with a heavy thud. Cold air rushed out. Decades of trapped breath exhaling all at once. I set down the grinder and picked up my flashlight. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The beam cut through darkness, revealed a space beyond, small, maybe 6 feet deep, 4 feet wide, lined with metal shelves and filled with boxes. I squeezed through the opening. The vault was cramped, the ceiling so low I had to crouch. The air smelled wrong, old and metallic with an undertone of paper decay. 3 metal shelves lined the back wall. The top held 2 wooden boxes. The middle shelf was stacked with ledgers. The bottom held bundles of papers tied with string. I reached for the nearest wooden box. My fingers brushed the surface, smooth, well made, no lock. I lifted the lid. Cash bonds, dozens of them, dated 1933. Each one worth $100, enough money to buy half the town back then. Beneath the bonds, legal documents, property deeds, transfer papers, all bearing the name Clara Hensley. My breath came shallow. I set the box aside and reached for the ledgers. 5 of them, leather-bound, filled with careful handwriting. I opened the first one. Hensley's General Goods, accounts receivable, 1930 column after column of transactions. Names, dates, amounts. Clara's business records, nothing unusual. Just a store owner keeping track, until I flipped to the back page. There, in different ink, a note written in the margin. They came again tonight, S. Avery and G. Callahan. Offered me half what it's worth. Said I should take it while I still can. The date, March 1934. 1 month before Clara disappeared. S. Avery, Samuel Avery, Thomas Avery's grandfather, G. Callahan. George Callahan, Patrick's grandfather. My vision blurred. I gripped the ledger so hard my knuckles went white. They were here, together, pressuring Clara to sell. I grabbed another ledger, hands trembling. More notes in the margins. More threats documented in Clara's careful hand. April 2nd, 1934. They brought the sheriff tonight. Said the building violated code. Said I'd be shut down by the end of the week. April 8th, 1934. My lawyer says I have no legal recourse. The town council voted to revoke my business license. All council members are either Avery or Callahan family. April 12th, 1934. I'm sealing this vault tonight. If they take everything else, at least the truth will survive. The last entry was dated April 14th, 1934. I am leaving tonight. They've made it clear I won't survive if I stay, but I won't let them erase me completely. These documents prove what they've done. Someday, someone will find them. Someday, the truth will matter. Below that, in careful letters, to whoever finds this, my name is Clara Hensley. This store was mine, built with my money, my labor, my husband's dream. The men who took it are thieves. Their names are Samuel Avery and George Callahan. Their families built their fortunes on what they stole from me. Do not let them rewrite history. The ledger slipped from my hands. I sat down hard on the vault floor, chest heaving. Patrick's grandfather, a thief, not just a thief, a man who'd driven a woman from her home, who'd stolen her business and her livelihood, who'd forced her into hiding. And then what? What happened to Clara after she sealed this vault? I grabbed the bundle of papers from the bottom shelf. Letters, dozens of them, all addressed in the same careful handwriting. The first envelope read, "To my son." I opened it with trembling fingers. The letter inside was short, 1 page. "My dearest boy, if you're reading this, I am gone. Know that everything I did was to protect you. The store, the money, the truth, I sealed it all away so they couldn't use it against you. Your father's family wanted this property. When I wouldn't sell, they manufactured reasons to take it, legal reasons, official reasons, all lies. I am giving you to your father's sister in Kansas City. She will raise you with a different name. You will grow up safe away from here, away from the men who destroyed me. Someday, when you're grown, you may return here. You may find this vault. You may learn what was taken from you. When that day comes, remember this. You come from strength. From a woman who built something real with her own hands. From a woman who wouldn't bend. The store is yours by right. Everything in this vault is yours. Use it wisely. All my love, your mother, Clara. I read the letter 3 times. Each time, the words hit harder. Clara had a son, a boy she'd sent away to protect, a boy who'd grown up somewhere else with a different name. I opened the next envelope. Another letter. This one dated years later, 1945. To whoever finds these records, I am Clara Hensley. I was driven from my home by men who wanted my property. I left behind proof of their theft. I left behind my son's inheritance. If you are reading this, perhaps my boy returned. Perhaps he found what was rightfully his, or perhaps you are a stranger, someone else who stumbled upon the truth. Either way, know this: the Avery and Callahan families built their wealth on stolen land. The founder's myth of this town is a lie. Make them remember Clara Hensley. Make them pay for what they took. The signature was shaky but clear. Dated just before Clara's death, according to the notation. Died alone in Kansas City, November 1945. No family present. Tears blurred my vision. I wiped them away roughly. Clara had died alone, far from home, driven out by the very men this town celebrated as founders, men whose descendants still ran Ashgrove, men like Mayor Thomas Avery, men whose legacies included Patrick's family. I spent 2 hours in that vault reading every document. The picture that emerged was brutal and clear. Samuel Avery and George Callahan had wanted Clara's property. Prime location on Main Street. She'd refused to sell. So they'd manufactured a crisis, revoked her business license, manufactured building code violations, used their positions on the town council to force her out. And when she'd left, they'd split the property. Avery took the building. Callahan took the cash bonds Clara had accumulated. They'd built their family fortunes on that theft, and then they'd erased Clara Hensley from history. No obituary, no record, just a disappeared woman and a locked building. Until now. I gathered the most important documents. The ledgers with their marginal notes, the letters, the property deeds showing the forced transfer. I loaded them into a canvas bag and sealed the vault behind me. The morning sun was bright when I stepped outside. Main Street was waking up. Cars passing, people walking. Normal life, but I felt like I was carrying a bomb. Everything this town believed about itself was a lie. Everything Patrick's family built was stolen, and I was the only one who knew. I walked to the library on shaking legs. Evie was at her desk, sorting returned books. She looked up and froze when she saw my face. "You opened it." I set the bag on her desk. Clara Hensley didn't disappear. She was driven out by Samuel Avery and George Callahan. Evie's hand went to her mouth. Patrick's grandfather? Patrick's grandfather, my voice cracked. He helped steal everything from her, built the family fortune on it, and then erased her from history. Evie opened the bag slowly, pulled out the ledgers. "Read Clara's marginal notes." Her face went pale. "Oh, Nora, there's more." I handed her Clara's letter to her son. "She had a child. Sent him away to protect him." Evie read the letter. When she looked up, her eyes were wet. "This changes everything." "I know. The mayor is Samuel Avery's grandson." "I know." We sat in silence for a long moment. Outside, life continued. Inside, the truth lay spread across a librarian's desk, like evidence at a crime scene. Finally, Evie spoke. "What are you going to do?" I looked at Clara's defiant face in the photograph on Evie's bulletin board. A woman who'd refused to bend. A woman who'd been erased for that refusal. "I'm going to make them remember her," I said. "I'm going to make them face what they did." Evie nodded slowly. "Then we'd better be ready. The Averys don't like being challenged. Neither do the Callahans." I thought of Patrick, of the man I'd loved, who'd never known his family's wealth was built on theft. But Patrick would have wanted the truth. "Are you sure?" I met her eyes. "I'm sure. Because that's what the vault had given me. Not just Clara's story, but a choice, silence or truth, loyalty to a lie or courage to face history. I chose truth, even if it meant burning down everything I thought I knew about the man I'd married. Even if it meant making enemies of everyone in this town. The vault was open now, and there was no sealing it shut again. The invitation came on cream-colored paper, embossed letterhead. Mayor Thomas Avery requests the pleasure of your company for dinner, not a request. A summons. Evie sat across from me at the diner, reading the note with narrowed eyes. He knows. Of course he knows. I stirred my coffee without drinking. Whole town probably knows by now. Small towns don't keep secrets, except the ones that matter. She handed the invitation back. Are you going? Would you? She considered this. Sunlight through the window caught the silver in her hair. I'd go armed. I almost laughed, almost. But the weight of Clara's letters in my bag kept humor at bay. With what? The truth? That's the most dangerous weapon you've got. The mayor's house sat on the hill overlooking Ashgrove. White columns, manicured lawn. Old money wearing new paint. I parked my borrowed car in the circular drive and sat for a moment gathering courage. Thomas Avery opened the door himself. Tall, silver-haired, wearing a smile that didn't touch his eyes. Mrs. Callahan, thank you for coming. Did I have a choice? His smile widened. We always have choices. That's what makes us human. The dining room was all dark wood and crystal. He poured wine I didn't drink. Made small talk about the weather, the town, my plans for the store. His voice was smooth, practiced, a politician's voice. I waited for the real conversation. It came with dessert. I understand you've been exploring your new property. He set down his fork with careful precision. Making discoveries. Old buildings hide old things. Some things are better left hidden. I met his eyes. Why? Because the past is complicated. Because truth without context is just cruelty. He leaned forward. You found records. Documents from a difficult time. The Depression was hard on everyone. People made choices we might not understand today. Choices like stealing a woman's property. His expression didn't change. Like I said, complicated. Clara Hensley's letters seemed pretty straightforward. Something flickered behind his eyes. Fear or anger, I couldn't tell. Those documents are town property, historical records. They should be preserved properly. In the town archives. They're in Clara's vault, in Clara's store. That makes them mine. The building may be yours. The history isn't. His voice hardened. I'm trying to be reasonable, Mrs. Callahan. But if you force my hand, I'll have to take legal action. Improper handling of historical documents. Destruction of town property. Building code violations. The same threats his grandfather used on Clara. I stood. Thank you for dinner, Mayor. Nora. He stood too. Please, think about what you're doing. Your husband's family built this town. Do you really want to destroy their legacy over something that happened before you were born? Patrick's face flashed in my mind. His smile. His certainty that truth mattered more than comfort. Patrick would want the truth, I said. Patrick's dead. The words were brutal. You're not. Be careful which battles you choose. I walked out into the night, with my hands shaking and my heart hammering against my ribs. Back at the store, I lit every lamp I had. Laid out Clara's documents on the counter. Among the papers I found something I'd missed before. A photograph. Clara standing in front of the store, hand on a young boy's shoulder. Maybe 5 years old. Dark hair, serious eyes. On the back in Clara's handwriting, for his future I surrender what is mine. 1934, her son. The boy she'd sent away. I stared at that small, serious face. Tried to imagine what became of him. If he'd ever returned. If he'd ever known what his mother sacrificed. Footsteps on the sidewalk outside made me freeze. Slow, deliberate, stopping at my door. A knock. 3 sharp raps. I moved to the window. Peered through the gap in the boards. Sheriff Drayton stood on the sidewalk, face shadowed by his hat. I opened the door. Sheriff, Mrs. Callahan, saw your lights on. Wanted to make sure everything's secure. I'm fine. He looked past me at the documents spread across the counter. That's evidence you're tampering with. Evidence of what? That's what concerns me. He stepped closer. You're digging in dangerous territory. Old crimes, old money. People who don't like having their foundations shaken. People like the mayor. People like everyone who matters in this town. His voice was tired. I'm not here to threaten you. I'm here to warn you. There are ways of making life difficult without breaking any laws. Your father helped them, didn't he? The words came out before I could stop them. He helped seal Clara's vault. Helped drive her out. Hank's jaw clenched. My father did his job. His job was protecting a theft. His job was keeping the peace. He turned away. Same as mine. Think about that before you start a war. You can't win. He walked back to his patrol car. I watched his taillights disappear down Main Street. I was alone. In a building that held stolen history. In a town that wanted me silent. But I wasn't Clara. I wouldn't disappear quietly. I spent the rest of that night documenting everything. Photographing documents. Copying Clara's letters in my own handwriting. Building a record that couldn't be destroyed. Because something in the mayor's eyes told me destruction was coming. Glass shattering woke me. I'd fallen asleep at the counter. Head on my arms, Clara's photograph clutched in my hand. Now I jolted upright in darkness, heart slamming, another crash. From upstairs, I grabbed the flashlight, moved toward the stairs on shaking legs, footsteps above, heavy, multiple people. Boards creaking under weight, they were searching for something. I backed toward the door, hand on the knob. But before I could turn it, a shadow appeared at the top of the stairs. She's here, I ran out the door into the street, screaming. Lights flickered on in windows above the diner. Dogs barked. The shadow didn't follow. By the time Sheriff Drayton arrived, they were gone. The store was wrecked. Shelves overturned. Floorboards pried up. And the vault stood open, empty. The metal box gone. The ledgers gone. Everything I'd left inside vanished. Did you see them? Hank asked, notepad in hand. 1, maybe 2. I didn't wait to count. Description. Dark clothes, male, that's all I saw. He wrote this down with obvious skepticism. What were they after? You know what they were after. His pen stopped moving. Mrs. Callahan, don't. My voice cracked. Don't pretend you don't know exactly who sent them. I can't investigate accusations without evidence. The evidence just got stolen. We stood in the wreckage of the store. Morning light filtering through broken windows. The vault door hanging open like a wound. But they'd made one mistake. I'd hidden copies. Did they get everything? Evie asked when I reached the library an hour later. I pulled a folder from my bag. Everything I left visible. Her eyes widened. You made copies last night. After the mayor's dinner, I spread the photographed documents across her desk. They took the originals. But Clara's story is right here. Evie grabbed my hand. Nora, they could have killed you, but they didn't. They just wanted the documents destroyed. I met her eyes, which means they're scared. Which means we're winning. This isn't a game. No, it's war. I thought of Clara's defiant face. The boy she'd sent away. The life stolen from her. And I'm not backing down. Evie was quiet for a long moment. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a worn notebook. My mother kept journals. I never understood why she wrote about Clara Hensley until now. My breath caught. Your mother knew her. Worked for her. At the store. Evie opened the journal. She was 16 when Clara disappeared. She never talked about it, but she wrote everything down. The entry was dated April 15th, 1934. Miss Hensley didn't come to the store today. The door was locked. I waited 2 hours. She never came. Mr. Avery and Mr. Callahan were standing across the street watching. When I tried to knock, they told me to go home. Miss Hensley was gone. The store was closed. That was all. I felt cold reading those words. She saw them. She saw everything. Evie flipped through pages. She saw them pressure Clara. Saw them manufacture violations. Saw Clara seal something in the vault the night before she left. Did she know about the son? Evie's face was pale. She knew Clara was protecting someone, but she never knew who. We spent the morning piecing together my copies with Evie's mother's journal. The story became clearer, sharper, undeniable. Clara Hensley was driven out systematically, her business destroyed, her property stolen, her name erased, and 2 families built their fortunes on that crime. What now? Evie asked. I looked at the documents, at Clara's photograph, at the evidence that could bring down the town's founding myth. Now we make sure everyone knows. Evie remembered something her mother wrote. A phrase that never made sense. The stone beneath holds deeper truths. We stood in the store's cellar. Water pooled in corners. Stone foundation walls pressed close. The air smelled of mold and earth. Beneath what? I swept my flashlight across the floor. The stone, there. Evie pointed to the corner. One section of floor was different, newer concrete among old stone. I knelt, ran my fingers along the seam. This was poured recently, maybe 20 years ago. About when my mother died. We looked at each other. Understanding passed between us. She sealed something. It took us an hour to break through the concrete. Evie swung the sledgehammer with surprising strength. Each strike echoed in the small space. Finally the concrete cracked, fell away in chunks. Beneath it a wooden trapdoor. I pulled it open. Cold air rushed up, carrying the scent of old paper and something else. Leather, preserved things. A ladder led down into darkness. I'll go first. I descended carefully, 6 feet down, maybe 7. My feet hit earth. The space was small, hand-dug, lined with brick. And there, against the back wall, a wooden chest. Evie climbed down behind me. We knelt beside the chest together. No lock. Just a simple latch. I opened it. Inside, leather journals. 3 of them. Clara's handwriting on every page. And beneath the journals, more documents. Birth certificates. Marriage records. A confession letter addressed to whom it may concern. I read it aloud, my voice shaking. My name is Clara Hensley. If you are reading this, I am dead. The men who drove me from my home believe they have won. But I leave this record so the truth will survive. Samuel Avery and George Callahan conspired to take my property. When I refused to sell, they manufactured building violations. They revoked my business license. They threatened my son's life. I left to protect him. I sent him to my late husband's sister in Kansas City. She raised him as her own. He carries a different name, but his blood is mine. His inheritance is the store, the property. The truth, his name is William Morgan. Born 1929, if he returns to Ashgrove, if he claims what is his, show him this letter. Show him what was stolen from him. The paper slipped from my hands. William Morgan, my grandfather's name. No. The word came out strangled. That's not possible. Evie grabbed my shoulder. Nora, my grandfather was William Morgan. Grew up in Kansas City. Married, had 1 son. My father. I was shaking. He never talked about his childhood. Never mentioned Ashgrove, because he was Clara's son. The world tilted. I sat down hard on the dirt floor. I'm Clara Hensley's granddaughter. Evie pulled out one of the journals, flipped through pages until she found what she was looking for. A photograph tucked between pages. A boy, maybe 10 years old. Serious eyes. Dark hair, the same boy from Clara's photograph. My grandfather, she wrote about him. Evie's voice was gentle. How she missed him. How she hoped he'd grow up strong. How she prayed he'd never know what she'd lost. I took the journal with trembling hands. Read my grandmother's words. My son is safe. That's all that matters. Let them have the building. Let them have the money. As long as William is safe, I can bear anything. Tears blurred the words. Patrick never knew. My voice broke. He never knew his grandfather stole from my grandmother. No one knew. Evie sat beside me in the dirt. That's what made it perfect. They erased Clara so completely that even her descendants forgot. I thought of Patrick. Our wedding. How his family welcomed me with open arms. How George Callahan's portrait hung in their living room. A pillar of the community. A founding father. A thief who'd stolen from his own future granddaughter-in-law. The irony was bitter as ash. What do? I whispered. Evie took my hand. You finish what Clara started. You take back what they stole. Word spread like wildfire. The widow found something. The widow's making claims. The widow says the founding families are thieves. I felt eyes everywhere. In the grocery store, at the post office, walking down Main Street. Whispers followed me like shadows. Some looked curious. Most looked hostile. Reverend Lewis stopped me outside the church. His face was kind, but his words weren't. Some stories shouldn't be unearthed, Mrs. Callahan. They only bring pain. Truth brings pain, I said. Lies bring rot. He shook his head sadly. You're disturbing the peace of the dead. The dead don't have peace when their stories are lies. The newspaper ran a story. Local woman makes historical claims. They quoted Mayor Avery calling me emotionally unstable and obsessed with conspiracy. They didn't quote Clara's letters. That night, Sheriff Drayton came to my rented room above the diner. His face was haggard. 10 years older than last week, my father was there. The words came out flat. When they sealed the vault, he helped them, stood guard while Avery and Callahan divided Clara's property. I let him in. We sat at the small table. He stared at his hands. I found his journal, hidden in my mother's attic. He wrote everything. His guilt, his shame, the money Avery paid him to stay quiet. Hank's voice cracked. He was a good man, but he did a terrible thing. So did mine, I said softly. He looked up. Your grandfather stole from his own future family. I told him everything. Clara's son, my grandfather, the blood connection that made this personal in ways I never imagined. Hank was quiet for a long time. What are you going to do? Expose it, all of it. I pulled out Clara's journals. At Founders' Day, when the whole town gathers to celebrate their history, I'm going to tell them the truth. They'll destroy you. Let them try. I thought of Clara's defiant eyes. I'm her granddaughter. I don't run, he stood, hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, I believe you. And I'll stand with you when the time comes, even against the mayor. Especially against the mayor. His smile was grim. My family's been cleaning up after the Averys for 3 generations. Time someone stopped. After he left, I read the rest of Clara's journals. Her final entries, written weeks before her death in Kansas City. I am dying. The doctors say cancer. I say grief. Grief for the life stolen. The home lost. The son I barely knew. But I am not without hope. I've hidden everything. The journals, the letters, the proof. Someday William will return. Someday he'll know the truth. Someday Clara Hensley will be remembered. The last entry was a single line. Make them pay. I closed the journal. I will, I whispered to my grandmother's ghost. I promise. Founders' Day was 3 days away. Evie spent 3 days in the courthouse basement. Came back with a cardboard box. Set it on the library table between us. Her hands were filthy, eyes bright, birth certificates, death records, property transfers, all of it. She pulled out the first document. George Callahan's estate papers. Listed one son, Robert Callahan. Born 1929, no hospital record, no birth certificate. Just appeared in the family Bible, 5 years old. Same age as Clara's son in the photograph. Evie laid out more papers. Robert Callahan married, had 3 children. One of them, Daniel Callahan, Patrick's father. I traced the line with my finger. Clara, her unnamed son, Robert, Daniel, Patrick, me. The room felt too small, too hot. You're not just uncovering the story, Nora. You are the story. I thought of Patrick, his kind face, his honest laugh. How he'd hated injustice. How he'd served his country believing in something good. He never knew his entire family line was built on theft, on a woman's forced silence. He never knew he was Clara Hensley's great-grandson. I pulled the photograph closer. That boy's dark hair, serious eyes. I'd seen those eyes in Patrick's baby pictures. In my own mirror. What are you going to do? Evie's question hung in the air. I'm going to tell the mayor who I am. Thomas Avery's office smelled like leather and old money. He sat behind a mahogany desk, smiled when I entered. That same cold smile, Mrs. Callahan. I heard you've been busy at the courthouse. I laid the documents on his desk. Birth records. Clara's diary. The confession letter. The photograph. His smile died. Clara Hensley had a son. She gave him to George Callahan's wife. That boy became Robert Callahan. Robert was my husband's grandfather. Avery's face went white. I'm Clara Hensley's descendant. The store was always mine. The truth was always mine. You stole from my family, he stood, hands flat on the desk, shaking. This proves nothing. These could be forgeries, mistakes. You can't. I am the rightful heir to Hensley General Store. Everything your grandfather took. Everything my husband's grandfather helped him take. I have legal claim. And I have proof of fraud. He moved around the desk, faster than I expected. Grabbed my arm. His voice low, desperate. You want money? I'll pay you. Name your price. Walk away. Let this town keep its history, its dignity. I pulled free. This isn't about money. Then what? Revenge? Justice? You can't bring her back. You can't undo what happened. No, but I can make sure people remember. Make sure Clara's name isn't forgotten. He stepped back. Something shifted in his expression. The charm, the control, all gone. Just fear now. And fury, you'll destroy this town. Everything my family built. Everything your husband's family benefited from. You'll make us all look like thieves. You are thieves." His face twisted. Get out of my office." I gathered the documents, walked to the door, turned back and found as day as Saturday. "I'll be there. With Clara's diary, with the proof. The town deserves to know who really founded this place." His voice followed me into the hallway, cold, final. "You do this. You lose everything, your name, your husband's memory, everything." I kept walking. The newspaper arrived Friday morning. Front page, Eileen Cross's story. Large headline, Ashgrove's hidden history. Store owner discovers evidence of founding family fraud. The article detailed everything. Clara's forced sale, the forged documents, Samuel Avery and George Callahan's conspiracy, my discovery of both vaults, the confession letter, and my connection to Clara Hensley. The phones started ringing before noon. Reporters, curiosity seekers, angry voices demanding I retract the lies, supportive voices thanking me for the truth. Evie fielded calls at the library. Hank posted himself outside the store, protection just in case. That evening, someone threw a brick through my window. Note tied to it with string. Leave town before Saturday. Hank found me sweeping glass. Took the note, read it. "Jaw tight. You don't have to do this tomorrow. We can postpone. Wait until things calm down." They won't calm down. Not unless someone stands up. He looked at the note again. Then at me, then I'll stand with you. Saturday morning broke clear, warm. The kind of day that made you believe in new beginnings. I dressed carefully. Navy dress. Patrick's watch on my wrist. Clara's diary in my bag. Evie picked me up at 8. Drove us to the town square. Already filling with people, bunting, flags. A stage set up in front of the courthouse. Mayor Avery's banner, celebrating 90 years of prosperity. My stomach twisted. "You can still back out," Evie's voice soft. Not urging. Just offering, I know, but I didn't. The ceremony started at 10. Mayor Avery took the stage. Spoke about heritage, legacy, the founding families who built Ashgrove from nothing. His voice smooth, practiced. The crowd applauded. I stood at the back, Hank beside me, Evie on my other side, waiting. Avery's speech wound down. He thanked the crowd. Started to introduce the next speaker, a city councilman. "Someone safe." I moved forward. Evie grabbed my hand. Squeezed once. Let go. I walked through the crowd. People turned, whispered, recognized me. Some faces hostile, some curious, some scared. I climbed the stage steps. Avery saw me. His expression froze. Microphone still in his hand. "Mrs. Callahan, this is a private ceremony." I took the microphone. Gentle but firm. He tried to hold on, then let go. The crowd went silent. "My name is Nora Callahan. Some of you know me. Some of you think you do. I came back to this town a widow. Bought the old Hensley General Store for $50. Thought I'd turn it into a library. A quiet place. I pulled Clara's diary from my bag. Held it up instead. I found this. A diary written by Clara Hensley. The woman who really owned that store. The woman whose name doesn't appear in any of your history books. The woman this town erased. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Avery moved toward me. Hank stepped between us. Blocked him. I opened the diary. Read Clara's words aloud. Her voice through mine. The forced sale. The threats. Samuel Avery and George Callahan's names clear as daylight. The crowd's murmurs grew louder. Avery grabbed for the microphone. "Those are lies, forgeries. Hank pulled a folder from his jacket. Stepped to my side. Took the microphone. "I'm Sheriff Hank Drayton. My father was sheriff before me, before he died. He told me he helped Samuel Avery seal the first vault in 1956. Helped bury the evidence. These are his personal ledgers, his confession. It's all true." He held up the papers. The crowd surged forward, voices rising, angry, confused, demanding answers. Mayor Avery's face went red. He lunged at me, grabbed the diary. We struggled. The microphone fell. Feedback screamed through the speakers. Someone shoved. I stumbled. The diary flew from my hands. Evie caught it. She stood at the edge of the stage, holding Clara's diary against her chest. Face fierce. "You want to destroy the evidence? You want to keep lying? You'll have to go through all of us." People in the crowd started moving, some toward the stage, supporting Avery, others backing away, uncertain. A man in the front row, old weathered face, raised his hand. "I remember Clara Hensley. I was just a boy. She ran that store. Kind woman. Then one day she was gone. My father said she left, but he always looked sad when he said it, like he knew it wasn't the whole truth." Another voice. "A woman. My grandmother worked at the courthouse. She told me there were records that disappeared, property deeds that didn't match. Said Samuel Avery paid people to stay quiet." More voices. More memories. The truth spreading like cracks through ice. Avery backed toward the stage steps, face pale now, desperate. "You're destroying this town. Everything we built on stolen land, with stolen money, built on Clara Hensley's forced silence." My voice cut through the noise, steady, clear. "I'm Clara Hensley's great-great-granddaughter. The store is legally mine. The truth is legally mine, and I'm giving it back to this town. All of it. The real history, the real names. The real cost of your prosperity, silence." Then slow at first. Applause, 1 person, 2, 10 growing, not everyone, but enough. Mayor Avery stumbled down the steps, through the crowd. Someone tried to stop him. He pushed past, disappeared into the courthouse. I stood on the stage, holding Clara's diary. Evie beside me, Hank's hand on my shoulder. The town square filled with voices, questions, arguments, demands for documents, for proof, for truth. It had begun 6 weeks later. Early November. The leaves turned gold and red. Mayor Thomas Avery resigned. Quietly, no press conference. Just a letter to the city council, citing personal reasons. Everyone knew the real reason. The courthouse opened an investigation, found more evidence, bank records, witness statements from elderly residents who'd stayed silent for decades. Everything confirmed Clara's diary. The theft, the conspiracy, the erasure. Samuel Avery's name was removed from the founder's monument. George Callahan's, too, replaced with Clara Hensley, first female business owner, 1928-1934. The store took longer to restore. I hired contractors, local workers who wanted to be part of something right. We tore out damaged walls, replaced the floor, rebuilt the vault. But this time, we built it as a memorial. Glass front, documents displayed inside. Clara's diary, her confession letter, the photograph of her and her son, the Hensley Center for Local History. We opened on a cold Saturday in December. The whole town came, not to celebrate, but to witness, to acknowledge, to remember. Evie became the curator, her title official now, printed on a plaque beside the door. She organized the documents, created exhibits, started recording oral histories from the oldest residents, preserving the truth before it could be buried again. Hank, the city council, appointed him town marshal, a position that hadn't existed in 50 years. He wore the badge like penance and pride, made sure the truth stayed protected, that the records stayed public, that no one could seal another vault. I donated Clara's bonds to establish a scholarship fund, the Clara Hensley Memorial Scholarship, for local students, especially girls, especially those whose families struggled. Clara never got to see her son grow up, but her legacy would help other children reach their futures. The first recipient, Rosie Mendez, the teenager who'd volunteered to help me clean the store that first week. She cried when we told her, hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. Thank you. And thank you for telling the truth. December 20th, cold, grey. I drove to the cemetery alone. Clara's grave had a new marker. Evie and I commissioned it together. Simple granite, but permanent. Clara Hensley, 1898-1956. Storekeeper, mother, truth-teller. They tried to erase me, but I remain. I laid a bouquet of winter flowers at the base. White roses, her favorites according to that old man's memory. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm sorry you had to hide the truth. I'm sorry you never got to come home. The wind stirred dead leaves. Somewhere a crow called, but I found it. I found everything, and now they remember. Now your name is written in stone, in history, in the hearts of people who know what you sacrificed. I touched the cold granite. Thank you for trusting that someone would find it. Thank you for believing someone would care. Thank you for my family. For Patrick, for the life I had. Even if it was built on painful ground, I stayed until the light faded, until the cold made my fingers numb. Then I drove back to the store, my store. Clara's store, inside. Warm light glowed through the windows. Evie was still there, organizing new documents. She waved when she saw me, smiled. I thought I bought an empty store for $50. Thought I was buying dust and wood and a quiet place to grieve. What I really bought was my family's forgotten name, my great-great-grandmother's stolen voice, the truth that 7 decades couldn't bury. I bought a reckoning, and in that reckoning, I found myself. The store stood solid in the darkness, no longer abandoned, no longer silent, light spilling from every window. People inside, talking, learning, remembering. Clara Hensley's general store, still standing, still serving, still telling its truth. I locked my car, climbed the steps, pushed open the door. The sign above the entrance, new brass gleaming, the Hensley Center for Local History, founded 1928, restored 1968. The truth, however long buried, remains. I stepped inside, closed the door behind me. Home. Up next, we have 2 more incredible stories that are waiting for you. Just click the image you want to watch and it will take you there. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. It would mean a lot.